And now I will introduce today's special guest. It would seem that the catchword of any political campaign these days is change. As was just proved south of the border, change is a powerful and highly motivating force. Our guest speaker today is running for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada and hoping someday to be Prime Minister. And change is an important part of his message to the Liberal Party, as well as to the voting public. A visit to Bob Rae's online blog makes this abundantly clear. He writes, "The Liberal Party is about the future. The Liberal Party is about change. The Liberal Party is about Canada. As Laurier said, first, last, and always. Always means the Liberal Party is about renewing and taking care of our country and the world." For Bob Rae, renewing our country and taking our place in the world will be predicated on renewing the Liberal Party itself. That's a big challenge, but Bob has faced his share of challenges during 3 decades in public life, and he knows a thing or two about change. It is interesting to note that this is Bob's 7th visit to the Canadian Club of Toronto. The first time was in 1982, when he was Ontario's NDP finance critic. He joined us again in 1990, 1992, and 1994 as Premier of Ontario. He addressed the club in 2002 as the chair of the TSO Transition and Renewal Committee. And this is his second time appearing as a contender for the federal Liberal leadership. The first was in 2006, and here he is in 2008, ready to enter the fray again. As I said before, Bob is no stranger to challenge or change. Please join me in welcoming to the podium today the Member of Parliament for Toronto Centre and a contender for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada, the Honourable Bob Rae.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Helen, and may I thank you personally for your great kindnesses over many, many years. May I also express my gratitude to Hal Jackman, who's the sponsor of today's event. Mr. Jackman and I have had a long and I guess what you'd call an interesting relationship. He had the temerity to fire me in 1995 for some particular reason. I don't know why. Might have been because I lost the election and he had to go through the formalities. But throughout all our time together, he's a very valued constituent of mine and a dear friend. And I have deeply appreciated his generosity of spirit over a great many years. I'm also grateful to all of you for being here today. I've had a chance to meet many of you today and say hello, and some I'm afraid I haven't, and I look forward to doing that before the event is over. But you all know who you are, and you have been very, very kind to me and to Arlene and to our family over a great many years. I first asked many of you for help when I first ran for politics in 1978. And one of my dear friends who's here today said, "Bob, you're the most expensive friend I've ever had, but it doesn't matter. I'm good for one more go." So that's fantastic. Thank you very much. As you know, I announced yesterday that I am indeed a candidate for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada, and I spoke yesterday about the need for change in our party and the need for change in the country. Of course, today I'm going to be concentrating in this distinguished audience with my many friends behind me and in front of me. I'm going to be talking to you very directly about the economy. Everyone today is very preoccupied with jobs, with retirement savings and pensions, with housing prices and how families and businesses can make ends meet in a world that is literally changing before our eyes. It's no exaggeration to say that this concern has spread relentlessly across Canada to every corner of the economy and indeed to every Canadian family. These concerns link Bay Street and Main Street. There's no difference anymore. We're all touched by what's taking place and what's happening. There are concerns that capital and credit markets have seized up and they've effectively stopped growth in its tracks. People are very concerned about today. They're also concerned about the longer term, about the jobs and prospects for their families well into the future. As a result of what's taken place, we might say that a perfect storm, it's hard to call it perfect, but it's certainly one hell of a storm, has hit Canada's manufacturing industries, its financial community, its housing sector, agriculture, commodities. No sector has been untouched or will be untouched by what's taking place. The combination of sharply falling demand from the United States, which is still our biggest market far and away, coupled with fierce competition from increasingly productive Asian factories. We have a gyrating currency that affects what we buy and what we sell. As in other crises, people, of course, spend less when they're much less sure about what's happening in the present and what could happen in the future. We're now facing what must be called a global whirlwind that is pounding not the abstract economy and not simply numbers that we see on a chart or on a screen, but they are pounding the real economy, the economy that affects every one of us, no matter how well off we think we are or how challenged our circumstances might be. It's important for those of us who are doing okay in life to remember that when a factory closes in a small community, the impact is literally devastating. When the biggest earner in the family gets laid off, literally everything changes. When a senior citizen living on the interest from investments sees their nest egg shrink by 30% in a matter of weeks, there are a lot of sleepless nights. Political parties and those that aspire to lead them have a critical role in helping Canadian families, communities and businesses get through tough economic times and get through stronger at the other end. The Liberal Party has always stood for helping people, communities and businesses in tough times. Sound economic and fiscal management and creating opportunity through generating prosperity are the cornerstones of the Liberal Party. Canadians, all Canadians, not just some Canadians or a few Canadians, but all Canadians, workers, business people from all backgrounds and from all walks of life expect intelligent action from their government when things aren't working well. Now, everyone in this room knows full well that I've had experience in governing when the economy goes into free fall, the worst recession to hit the province of Ontario since the Great Depression. Then, as now, the recession was global in nature, but I dare say now it's different and potentially even more severe. But I do know some things. I know what it means to face the pressure of office during tough economic times. To put it mildly, to lead a new government that had never been in office before in 1990 was a challenge. And as I've said on many occasions, and I will say them again, if I had to do it all over again, yes, of course, I would do some things differently. I suspect many of you can say the same thing about your experiences over the last 20 years. Some 20 years later, and with many other experiences under my belt, I hope that I can apply some lessons learned to the challenges of today and tomorrow. But to the regret of many of my critics, and I've had a few over a lifetime of 30 years in public service, my career didn't end, or my life didn't end. Nothing ended in 1995. I woke up and had to start all over again, and thanks to my friends at the Goodman's Law Firm who are here, and to whom I'm extremely grateful for their generosity over the years, I've worked on some very intractable challenges. The restructuring of the Red Cross, the largest restructuring of a charitable organization in the history of the country, the largest class action lawsuit that was settled out of court in the history of the country. The Burnt Church negotiations on Aboriginal fishing rights, helping the Toronto Symphony Orchestra get back to its music, my work for Premier McGuinty on higher education, the Air India report. What all these projects had in common ultimately was that the solution was about creativity, the solution was about hope, and the solution was about action. Yes, the solution was about change. The solution was about managing through a crisis. It was sometimes a tragedy, as in the instance of the Air India bombing. But above all, it was about learning and building something better and stronger at the other end. So here for the record are some lessons learned from a life of public service. I'm doing this. I look forward to my fellow politicians to do the same, because it seems to me in moments of candor it's important for us to do this and to share these lessons and these things. Lesson one, and we're seeing it today with the revision of the numbers literally every week of what we think the deficit really is. Well, I know something about that. In an election campaign, we were told that there was no deficit. Does that sound familiar? And then suddenly, when I took office, the day after the election, I had a meeting with officials who said, well, actually, Premier-elect, the numbers are a little different. And then it really started in earnest. And so I know something very personally about the speed with which a falling economy can cause the revenues of government to literally evaporate into the air. And believe me, that is a lesson that I've learned, and I hope that all of us who are involved in politics, both provincially and federally, learn it as well. It's interesting to see that Mr. Harper is learning it too, because as recently as 4 weeks ago, he was telling Canadians that our economy was fundamentally strong and that his government would not run a deficit. He's now changed his tune quite radically in 4 short weeks. That's okay. Now he and Mr. Flaherty talk openly about recessions and deficits. Lesson 2. Times of crisis teach us the importance of being practical and show us the folly of ideologies and theories. It was a great British conservative, somebody that Mr. Jackman and I both admire a great deal, Edmund Burke, who reminded us, and I'm quoting, he said, "There's nothing more dangerous than to govern in the name of a theory." Mr. Harper, like Mr. Bush, is now being forced to abandon some of his theories and his ideologies. It's about time. Lesson 3, prosperity matters, and it cannot be taken for granted. Canada is not entitled to it. We have to earn it. It is prosperity that allows us to take care of our families, that allows us to live in good health, that allows us to enjoy life. As the singer said, "I've been rich and I've been poor, and rich is better." Lesson 4, fiscal discipline matters, and it is linked to prosperity. This is not a lesson simply that one person has learned. This is a lesson that a whole generation of us have learned as we fought to build a consensus in the early 90s as to what needed to be done to make sure that we were linking and tying everything we were doing to the importance of connecting the search for prosperity with the search for fiscal discipline. And lesson 5, governments must ensure that everyone benefits from the opportunities that prosperity can create. That's what makes us a great democratic country. It's the fact that, yeah, we do well. We want people to do well. We want our citizens to do well. We want, frankly, and I know my friends from the Toronto Dominion Bank are here and others are here, we want our banks to do well. Somebody was once saying to me, well, bank profits are terrible. I said, it's actually nicer to have bank profits than to have bank losses. It's better for us to have that. And I think we're seeing how true that is today. Lesson 6 is quite a simple lesson, and that is that you can't go it alone, whether you're Ontario or Canada. I don't care how big or strong you think you are, global recessions are humbling to the mighty, and we've seen that. Even the so-called superpowers are having to learn that there are some events and some things in the world which are even bigger than they are, and it teaches us all that lesson of humility. And with that lesson comes, I think, the political requirement to get everyone to the table. You need other governments, and we've finally seen this in the cooperation between the federal and provincial governments. You need community leaders, you need to build consensus for tough action, and you need to have confidence in this country. All of us in public life have to say this directly to Canadians. No matter how tough it gets, it's going to get better. Roosevelt's phrase, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself," is as true today as it was when he spoke those words in the White House in March of 1933. All of us have an obligation to restore confidence and to create a sense of confidence in everything that we do, in the steps that we take, in the comments and criticisms that we make, and the way in which we work together and help the economy to pull through and help us to come out stronger. Stronger as companies, stronger as families, stronger as businesses, stronger as provinces and countries. You know, because they're human, governments continue to make mistakes. I don't think I was the first one to make one, and I don't think I'll be the last one to make one. Mr. Martin left office in early 2006 and handed Mr. Harper a $13 billion surplus. I feel when I look at that number, I feel a little bit like Jack Nicklaus commenting on Tiger Woods' golf game when he said he plays a game with which I'm not familiar. I don't know what it would be like to be handed a $13 billion surplus. It was supposed to be a rainy day fund, if you will. Well, it's not just raining out there, it's pouring. It sure would be nice to have even half of that surplus today to help families and businesses get through this downturn. But it's gone. It's disappeared into the night. And it's impossible for anyone seriously to say that that represents, over the last 2 years, responsible or prudent fiscal management. It's because Mr. Harper governed in the name of theories for too long, and the cupboard is bare as a result. But we need honesty and we need thinking from our political leaders more than ever today. So let me say, it's not simply about taking lessons learned. It is about saying, how do we apply some of these lessons to where we are today and where we need to be as a country tomorrow? And so we go from lessons learned to what my grandmother, Nell Ray, used to call the human footsteps. We have to take the human footsteps to get us to the next point, to make the kind of progress that's required. Step one, I believe, is that we must support the key industries that drive the Canadian economy. The credit crisis has stopped growth. We need to get it back. In the car industry, for example, the federal government has to get to Detroit and Washington to discuss major assistance packages that are essential to this completely integrated industry. We can't afford to be away from or apart from the discussions that are now not taking place, but they will be taking place again soon, with respect to the future of that industry in the United States. We must be part of any solution, or we risk losing much more than we already have. But in return, Ottawa, like Washington, and that's part of what the bargaining and the negotiation that we see is all about, we must insist on a profound commitment from the industry to make it sustainable and to make it competitive in the future. That's the bargain that must be struck if the taxpayer is involved. We build, together with the industry, we build the green, sustainable, and competitive industries of the future. Of course, we've all seen it on the air, there's a healthy resistance to throwing good money after bad. But again, I would ask everyone, let's start talking practically, and let's not just talk about theories. Mr. Dottori is with me today, and we were together in the early 90s when we had to talk about how would we be able to restructure a mill in Kapuskasing. Mr. Armstrong's at the back of the room, being very modest, a great public servant in Ontario, former Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade. And Tim and I worked very hard in negotiations on how would we make sure that the de Havilland plant, which is the largest manufacturing plant in metropolitan Toronto and a huge employer, a significant added value, how would we be able to make sure that that industry was going to be competitive and we were going to have a good structure when Boeing simply walked in and said, we're out of here. I'll never forget the conversation that I had with the president of Dofasco, who phoned me at home on a Sunday afternoon to say that the company was going to be making a very significant announcement tomorrow with respect to their decisions about Algoma Steel. And of course, there were the same arguments, right? I mean, there were people who said, well, you can't just bail them out. You can't just throw money at the problem. You've got to look at the problem underneath. And of course, that's right. You can't just bail them out, but neither can you just walk away. Because we decided that we would help companies and communities, owners and workers. We would help them to invest in their future and in our future. We insisted on certain things. We didn't go in without conditions. We said you have to have a real business plan, which is what Congress is doing, did yesterday, and that's exactly what they should be doing. We insisted on better labor relations. We said we can't have this age-old antagonism. We can't have work rules that don't make sense anymore. We can't have an attitude of confrontation that doesn't help things. We've got to get this thing together. We did our due diligence on competitiveness. And I'm proud to say that those and countless other initiatives saved thousands of jobs. They saved communities. And yes, they even saved families. Some of the ideologues called them bailouts then, and they'll call them that today. But in fact, the costs of those restructurings have been recovered many times over in tax revenues alone. Step two is for the federal government, the provinces and the municipalities to invest in infrastructure, not in a small way, not in a tiny way, not in a marginal way, but in a big way. We know in this country we have opportunities, we have things to do, we have things we have put off, we have things we have not done, and we've got to get Canada back to work building this country and making it the great country we know that it can be. Because our crumbling I wasn't sure you were out there. You're so calm and quiet out there. I know it's the Canadian Club, but you can still get into this thing, you know. Our crumbling infrastructure adversely affects business productivity and our quality of life. It's a simple fact that we haven't made investments in water. We haven't made investments in transit. We haven't made investments in the things we need to invest in that, in fact, will improve the competitiveness of our economy, will improve its productivity. It's now is the great time to act. It's the natural time for us to be acting. It's the logical time for us to be doing these things. Major infrastructure will help maintain jobs. It will help maintain demand in the economy. It will make us more productive. We need everyone on board for this project, and there's much to do. Transit, universities and colleges, reconstruction, water treatment, you name it, the need is there. We need green bonds to raise capital to finance green infrastructure. And yes, we do need public-private partnerships for some infrastructure projects because we can get better value for money, as we did in the original construction of Highway 407, but not, I might add, in that sale of the asset at a price that could have been better, in my view. And that's what worries me about this notion of, in a down market, it's a great time to sell assets. I don't think so. I may be new at this, but I don't think so. Le troisième piste serait d'aider les familles qui travaillent à gérer ces moments difficiles. Il faut assurer la prestation de l'assurance emploi à tous les Canadiens qui ont besoin. Il faut aussi assurer l'offre de la meilleure formation possible pour l'avenir. Parallèlement, il faut modifier le programme prêt d'études canadien pour assurer que tous les étudiants aient accès aux prêts à un faible taux d'intérêt. C'est une pénible réalité que de moins en moins de familles auront suffisamment de revenus disponibles pour financer les études de leurs enfants et de nombreux étudiants potentiels éviteront d'étudier par crainte d'engendrer une dette écrasante. Il ne faut pas que cela se produise. Pour ne pas délaisser les gens, et c'est ça le principe important, le principe de la solidarité que nous devons appliquer dans cette situation. Il faut travailler plus fort avec les provinces et le secteur privé afin de développer des possibilités pour la formation de tout le monde, mais surtout les Autochtones, les entreprises autochtones, les programmes qui favorisent l'intégration souple des nouveaux arrivants à la société canadienne tout en reconnaissant leurs compétences et pour accorder une attention spéciale à ceux et à celles qui accusent un retard. Step 2, as we focus on what we need to do to make sure that people aren't left out. For too many Canadians, the dark humor of these days is all about retirement and the new reality of Freedom 95, replacing Freedom 55. Like much humor, and I've often been accused of telling jokes at inappropriate moments, but in my view there are almost no inappropriate moments to tell a joke. Thank you. Speaking of which, Jerry Seinfeld once said that more people are afraid of public speaking than they are of dying, which means that at a funeral there'd be more people who'd be happier to be in the casket than giving the eulogy. I've always liked that joke. I know it's not appropriate. But the fact of the matter is, when you think about the challenge that's facing those of us who do open these monthly envelopes with a sense of extraordinary trepidation, or else don't open them at all. We just say, I'll wait. I'll wait till things get a little better before I see what these numbers are all about. And for the younger people in the group, many of whom are here, my children are all, my 3 daughters are here, I'll explain what that means. Your parents and grandparents have tried to save a little bit. And as we try to save a little bit, we put that money into various funds, and many of the fund managers are here. Kiki's here. I'm not advertising for anybody. They help make those funds grow. But they only grow as the economy grows and as the stock market grows. In the last 2 or 3 months, we've seen a rather traumatic change in that pattern. And, when you have to convert at age 71 your RRSP into a fund that will give you a monthly income, it's really tough right now. I mean, this conversion is proving very, very difficult. So we have to make things change quickly. We have to change the pension rules so that seniors aren't forced to liquidate assets in this bear market. At the same time, we also know that in the private sector, and there are many people here who are working in the private sector, many unions are here. My friend Pat Dillon at the back from the building trades, my friends from the carpenters are here, and I'm very conscious of the challenges that we face in many of these multiple plans. Again, we see the values going down. We see tremendous solvency issues for the employers and for those who have to contribute to these plans. And if this thing isn't dealt with, it will feed on itself, and it will get even worse, and this whole issue of confidence will come back. We need to think seriously about longer-term solutions that will make it easier and less expensive for Canadian businesses and their employees to build secure pensions. And I believe that in the longer term, this is going to be a very exciting area of public policy. I know that some, particularly at the Ray table, eyes will glaze over as I discuss this question. But in fact, it's quite important for us to say, look at what the Pearson government did to create the Canada Pension Plan. And think of what the next Canadian government can do to transform the Canadian pension plan, to bring it into line with our needs and the demands of the 21st century, and to see what we can do to create individual accounts in addition to the accounts that are already there, but to allow for more voluntary saving and to do it at a cheaper rate and in a more effective way than is currently the case. There's some very exciting things that can be done, but we have to do them together. And we have to have the courage and the imagination to do it. We have to ensure that pension rules alone don't force companies into bankruptcy, because that will result in both job losses and lost pension plans. These three steps, engaging more actively on restructuring, investing in infrastructure, helping families, students and seniors, these are all critical, practical actions. They must all be carried out in a framework of fiscal responsibility and prudence. But, it's not just the problem today. It's not just the crisis we're facing today. It's not just a series of quick fixes that we've got to look at and deal with, even though those fixes are important. I think the biggest challenge that we face, in fact, talking to people, is there's an underlying anxiety that Canadians have. Let me try to express what that anxiety is. And that anxiety really comes to the surface in times of economic difficulty. The anxiety is, holy smokes, the whole balance of productivity, the whole shift of production seems to have gone over to Asia. Where are we going to be? What are the great jobs that our children and grandchildren going to have in the future? How are we, in fact, going to be competitive in this increasingly shrinking global economy? How do we fit in here? How do we make sure that our children and our grandchildren are, in fact, going to be better off than we are? How do we make sure that we're not the last generation to enjoy, holidays and summer homes and things that many, many middle-class Canadians have assumed was something that they could aspire to? Well, I have not a long series of answers that I'm going to give you today. You'll be glad to hear. But I do have some particular approaches that I think we really have to focus on as a country. And I want to express my appreciation to the TD Bank, because 3 years ago, Charlie Bailey gave me the opportunity to chair a conference on productivity in Canada. And Mr. Bailey was very, very kind in giving me that responsibility, because for a banker to ask Bob Rae to chair a conference on that kind was a leap of faith. And it was a great conference, because we focused on some very critical issues. We focused on infrastructure, but we also focused on two other things that need to be addressed. And the first one is the priority that education has in the life of a productive nation. Yes, we have to invest. Yes, we have to invest in our physical infrastructure. But above all, we have to understand that we will not only be earning our way in the world, we have to learn our way in the world. And just as I've talked about lessons learned, it's important for us to understand that the more we focus on education, the more we focus on training, the more we focus on the requirement of lifelong learning, the better off we will be as a country. This is very personal for me. It's not just an abstract thing. I'm very proud that my mother Lois is here. And she will appreciate the number of times her mother-in-law told us the story of my father's scholarship to college in 1932. And how, if he had not received that scholarship, he would not have had the opportunities that he had. Well, these are life lessons that we hear as children, and certainly for someone like her, who had to leave school at the age of 12, because in Scotland in those days, that was what happened, and that was the expectation that parents had. She could quote whole swaths of Burns without having had more than a grade 7 education. But let me tell you something. As I look out at this audience, I ask you to cast your minds for a moment to the place that is described by Joseph Boyden in his Giller-winning book, The Shores of James Bay, where there are children who are living in the deepest of poverty, where there are kids who are growing up in homes where the wind comes through, where the food is expensive and full of sugar, where they can't learn because of the challenges facing their families, where their 12 or 14-year-old brothers and sisters are sniffing glue out of a car or looking at the fumes of a car. My friends, those kids are going to be coming into our cities. And as they come into our cities, we have to ask ourselves, what are we building for them? What is the training and education we're providing for them? I think of the workers in St. Catharines and in Windsor and in Sudbury and across this province and across this country who at age 40 and 45 and 50 are facing layoffs. We have to provide them with opportunity and with education and with retraining. And the little kids who are growing up in the large high-rises in this constituency of mine in Jamestown, these little kids whose parents have come from Somalia and Uganda and Jamaica and all over the world. What are we doing to make sure that they get the early childhood education that's going to put them in school, make sure they don't drop out in grade 8 and grade 9 and grade 10, make sure they get to college and university, and then make sure they face a lifetime and a life opportunity of learning and earning? That is the central challenge for Canada. That is the great challenge that we face. And we cannot be small-minded in this. We can't say, well, this is an area of provincial jurisdiction. We can't have the provinces and governments fighting over jurisdiction and over turf war. We need a national effort to get this done, because it is so important to our future as a country. Because the way we're going to do well in the world is by doing it smarter and better. The second thing we have to overcome is this resistance to the word productivity or to the word competitiveness. I can remember back 15, 20 years ago, I'd have some people saying, Premier, don't ever use that word. We don't like to hear that word. Well, we have to use that word. We have to talk about how do we become more productive as an economy? How do we become more productive as a country? And here we have to recognize that our tax system has to be brought in line with the need for greater productivity. That we have to have the courage to do what people have done in previous generations, to say, how can we do this more productively? How can we create a tax system that will work more effectively? How can we make sure that, again, the provinces and the federal government aren't bickering and falling over themselves? How can we make sure that there aren't duplicating sales taxes, duplicating gas taxes, duplicating every form of tax, adding to the cost of regulation, adding to the burden on small business? How can we not see the need for us, in a world that is shrinking so much smaller, the need for us to think far more boldly about the things that we can do to, in fact, make Canada more productive and more competitive, and yes, more fair. And that also means that we have to worry about how do we use the tax system to ensure that venture capital is welcome in this country, that we, in the words of Gerard Kennedy, that we look at a culture of risk and enterprise that's necessary for Canada and important for Canada, and see how we can create not one RIM, not one Bombardier, but frankly, we need hundreds of RIMs and hundreds of Bombardiers to become the successful economy of the future. And the last thing I want to say is actually going to surprise some people. Because here I am, the former Premier of Ontario, here I am in Toronto, and I'm here to tell this audience that, yes, you know, it's not such a bad thing that our friends in Western Canada have done so well. And it's not such a bad thing for Canada. In fact, it's a great thing for Canada that there are great centers of innovation and great centers of enterprise in Regina and Saskatoon and Winnipeg and Calgary and Edmonton and Lethbridge, that we have universities that are doing great research in all aspects of our new economy. And yes, we are an oil and gas and resource producing country. We have been and we always will be, because the world is going to continue to need these products and these fuels. Yes, in a different way. They have to be produced in a way that's cleaner and better and more sustainable. Yes, of course. But every Canadian has to know that we here in Toronto and we in Quebec, partout au Canada, nous sommes fiers du fait que nous avons des industries qui font bien et qui accomplissent des grandes choses à travers le pays. And I say to my fellow Canadians who live in Western Canada, we welcome your success. We welcome your prosperity. And my God, we are grateful for it because, as I said, it's much better to have prosperity than the reverse. Mes amis, je veux vous remercier tous pour le fait que vous êtes venus. Je veux dire tout simplement que je me présente comme chef du parti parce que je crois au Canada. Et croyant au Canada, ça veut dire que moi aussi je crois au Québec. Le Québec que je connais personnellement et que j'ai connu depuis des années et surtout dans mon période comme Premier ministre, c'est un Québec d'entreprise. C'est un Québec où les valeurs d'entreprise ont été tellement acceptées par leur gouvernement, et c'est un Québec qui a réussi et qui continue de réussir dans le domaine de l'économie. C'est ça vraiment la révolution tranquille qui est faite au Québec. Et c'est ça la révolution tranquille que moi, je veux voir à travers le pays. Et je veux voir la chance pour le leadership du Québec de montrer à nous, comme Canadiens, ce que nous pouvons faire comme pays. My friends, I can tell you that we will face a new era of prosperity. The bad times that we're facing will pass. We know that because everything in our past experience has taught us that. A new era of prosperity, however, will not come about on its own. It's going to require focus and resolve. It means that Canada will once again have to find its voice, a voice that transcends borders and transcends barriers and speaks to a common interest that's far stronger than what divides us. That voice must express this point at home and abroad, that things, as I said, will get better, that opportunities will come again. That voice must speak for our values as well as our interests. Be prepared to face stormy weather and remind the world that Canada is, in the words of Champlain, a great and beautiful place, and that we want as Canadians nothing more than to build peace and prosperity for ourselves and for all our friends and for all our neighbors in the world. Le Canada, comme l'a décrit Champlain, est un immense et beau pays qui ne demande pas mieux que de créer la paix et la prospérité chez lui et pour tous ses amis et tous ses voisins. I am, as I joked at the beginning, once again, I'm asking for your help and I'm asking for your support. I can't go on this mission and this journey alone. I can't succeed by myself. It's true that, as I said yesterday, this is not a game or a business for the faint of heart, but it requires the efforts not just of a few, but as we've seen in the great political efforts in other countries, to succeed it requires the work, the help, and indeed the financial assistance of thousands and thousands of people. I want to thank you in closing, each and every one of you, for the many, many kindnesses that you've given me and to my family, who I'm surrounded by today. over a lifetime of public service in this country on behalf of Canadians. I would like to continue that service by leading the Liberal Party of Canada. And I dearly hope, that we can travel on this journey together. Thank you.
I'd like to ask John Duffy, Director of the Canadian Club of Toronto, to come forward and thank Bob Rae officially.
Thank you, Helen. Merci, Monsieur Rae. Hier, à Montréal, j'ai fait un petit colloquium pour l'Institut Dominion au sujet de Sir Wilfrid Laurier. And we talked about, at one part, Laurier, the politician, as well as the statesman, the Quebecer, the internationalist, the Prime Minister. We talked about two things as essential conditions for Laurier's achievement. One of them, they were both quite topical, one of them was the ability to withstand the Conservative attack machine. It existed in the 1890s, it exists today, and the question is not who can never be attacked by their political opponents. Politics means you have opponents, that's definitional. The question is, who can withstand those attacks and keep fighting for what they believe in and survive and continue to make a contribution. Mr. Rae, you continue to do so, and it is wonderful to see. The second thing we talked about in that wonderful symposium that the Dominion Institute put on about Sir Wilfrid Laurier was about the higher things, beyond the tactics, beyond the negative politics, the higher aspirations. And for Laurier, there was no higher aspiration than bringing people together. He was the great rassembleur. And I think that it's a testament, Mr. Rae, to your ability as a rassembleur, that we're in a room that has everyone from Lieutenant Governor Jackman and Frank Dettori, and I think I see Jack Mintz, all the way to Pat Dillon and Ukal from the Carpenters, and a lot of people in between like myself. Premier, there's only one person in this country who can bring people together like this, and it is a time in the life of our country when we need someone with the ability to bring people together like this, a time when the Liberal Party needs that too. So, Premier, I can think of no better way to thank you than to urge everybody to log on to www.bobrae.ca and explore it, get involved in Mr. Rae's campaign, and thank him in that way so that he can continue to help bring all of us together. Merci, Mr. Rae.
Thank you, John. Thank you again, Mr. Rae, and thank you to all our guests for joining us today. This concludes our television programming, which will be broadcast on Rogers TV in the days to come. This meeting is now adjourned.